1952, Ernest Hemingway wrote the book, The Old Man and the Sea. It's a story about an old Cuban fisherman who's kind of declining in his career. He goes out this one day. He's been 84 days without a fish. 84 days! And he goes out and he's kind of in this despair. But there's always this flicker of hope that he's going to catch the great marlin. Way, way, way out to sea. He feels that hook set. And then begins this epic battle between the old man and the great beast of nature. And the man suddenly has a reason to live. He is going to fight for his life with this marlin. This is what's going to give him significance, the struggle between man and beast. And he finally brings the marlin up to the boat. The marlin is bigger than the boat, and he takes the harpoon and plunges it into the marlin's belly, and he defeats it. He has his triumph. He starts to row back, and he's a long way out. He starts to row back, and all of a sudden the little sharks come. Packs of little sharks, and start chomping on the marlin, a little here, and a little there, and a little there. And the old man screams. He stands up in the boat. He throws his one harpoon at him. But what's one harpoon with 50 sharks? So the return trip continues and continues and continues, and he finally gets to the beach. He gets out of the boat, and he looks back, and there is his marlin. Nothing but a skeleton. His triumph has been killed. His life has been used. Been there, done that describes the depressing routine that we go through every day, and we wonder, what in the world is my life all about? Am I just banging my head against the wall? What does it really mean? But it's not only the average day life, average, ordinary life. Everybody, even the great people in life, become obsolete and useless. I'll never forget Nancy Reagan's comment when Ronald Reagan was in the last stages of Alzheimer's. She said, I was born, my father was a doctor. I know what dealing with physical ailments are, but nothing prepared me to deal with the Alzheimer of my husband. Remember Ronald Reagan in his prime, right? And at the end, he couldn't even remember it. But that's life. And we ask ourselves, well, what is it all about? If when we die, that's all. What is all this stuff with the words like honor and nobility and integrity and truth and righteousness? Is this something that the elite people are using to con us, to manipulate us? Or do these things really exist? But if there is nothing after death, how can these things exist? Job was a guy who was really tight with God. And God had blessed him. And then God decided for some reason to let Satan at him, and Satan took away everything. Took away his family, took away his material things, took away his health. And the whole book of Job is really Job asking, why did you do this, God? But in the midst of all the questioning and the doubts and the uncertainties, Job maintains a firm hope in the resurrection. Take a look again at those beautiful, beautiful words. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I will see him with my own eyes. You know, the word Redeemer in the Old Testament was very interesting. It was the ultimate safety net. God told people, he said, look, you're responsible for your kin. It was called kinsman redeemer. Your closest of kin was responsible for you, and you were responsible for them. So if you got to the point where you were just down and out and couldn't help yourself, even to the point where you had been sold as a slave, your kinsman redeemer was to come and rescue you. If you had to have justice and couldn't have justice on your own or find justice, your kinsman redeemer was supposed to get that justice for you. Now Job, he knew that he wasn't going to pull himself up by the bootstraps. He knew that he needed supernatural help. and he goes to his divine Redeemer. It's very, very clear that this Redeemer that Job speaks of is God himself. And what does he say? I know that you will vindicate me, even if it's in the next life. And that's the key. Job had every reason to commit suicide from a human perspective, but he kept on going. His wife said, "Curse God and die." He said, "No." The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. I know that my Redeemer lives, and I'm going to continue to live in his glory. Because he believed there was something afterward, something in which God was going to explain everything and make everything right. What does that say to your life? It just has such an incredible, incredible application. You see, you're not just living your earthly life, then you're going to die, and then you're going to go into eternity. It means that your life today is just one long extension of eternity. It means that what you're doing in your everyday life that you consider meaningless, that you consider average, is being used in the hands of Almighty God to accomplish things and to put together his puzzle for history. Your daily life, at times, because of your attitude towards Jesus Christ, causes heaven to erupt in applause. Have you ever thought about that? It's a pretty cool way to live. The last thing I'd like to share with you today is how the resurrection makes sense out of death. And I know that, death may seem far away, but if you don't know how to die, it's pretty hard to know how to live. There's some people that just ignore death and say, when it comes, I'm not going to worry about it. Because then, I just cease to exist. And I am a thing, and then I'm going to be nothing. But that really undermines, and then going back to something we talked about, if we're not accountable for our lives, why is there so much right and wrong and justice in our world? I mean, you had to obey all sorts of laws to get here, right? You couldn't go 90 miles an hour in a 20 zone, could you, even though you wanted to? You had to stop at stop signs, even though you didn't want to. You had to drive on the road, even if you wanted to take a shortcut. I mean, you could have done a series of things that could have locked you up for 20 years on your way to church this morning. And what if you would have said to the judge, doesn't matter anyhow what the laws are. When we're dead, and there are no laws, and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to get punished for what I do, so why do you have the right to punish me today? You probably wouldn't accept that, would you? But you got to ask yourself, if we're so into justice and right and wrong today, and don't you feel that when you hear of somebody being brutally murdered, and the person who did the murdering is totally unrepentant, and they laugh at the trial, isn't there something in you that says that person's got to pay for it after this life? I think all of us know deep down that what we do today is going to have consequences in eternity. The big question is what behavior? We get to pick and choose and say, well, this kind of life, I got to do these things and those things and a few other things, but I can do whatever I want in these areas. Is that okay? Do we all get to describe our plan? That doesn't really help us out too much. That's where the Bible gives us the big picture view of what death is all about. The Bible is really consistent here. It says everything that we do. Everything that we do, we're accountable for. Not only what we say or what we do, but it's what we think. Because what we think is what comes out in our hands, in our mouths. And so what's God's dilemma? He looks at us. Our God is a personal God. He's a perfect God. What's he going to do with us? We go against his will. We contradict him. Does he ignore us? Does he destroy us? Or does he intervene? He intervenes, right? We just celebrated Good Friday, and that is God's intervention. When God becomes a human being and takes sin on the world, the sin of the world on himself. Now think about that. That's not fair, is it? Why is he taking our sin on himself? But that's what God did.